Hello everyone, welcome back to our series on beginner birding or learning how to go birding. This is the last part 3 of 3. This last segment is going to discuss the equipment you might need for birding as well as some resources that you'll find very helpful. We'll then go into a little bit on feeding birds, attracting birds to your yard, making your yard bird friendly. So there's going to be very little actual how to go birding stuff in this presentation. So if you are interested more in how to identify birds and go birding itself, I would recommend watching part 1 and 2 before this one. So like I've said a couple times in this webinar series, in order to properly go birding, you really do need to get a bird book or a bird guide. Identifying a new bird is going to be almost impossible without it, as you'll have nothing to reference, nothing to look at to help you figure out what kind of bird it is. There are a ton of field guides available. I would strongly recommend as a beginner that you do find a book that's more based on your region. Just because this is going to really cut down on the sheer volume of birds that you're going to have to look through every time you want to identify a new bird. So these books here, the Birds of North America, even Birds of Western North America, each of these books are going to have over 1,000 bird species in it, which can be very overwhelming. And that's in comparison to these very regional books. So each of these bird books are going to have only a few hundred birds in them. If you're really just going to start out in your backyard and maybe some trails around your town or your little area, you can go very regional, maybe restrict yourself just to interior of BC or even just the Okanagan. If you are going to maybe go birding when you go camping or when you visit friends and family, you can go a little bit more general and maybe go with the Birds of British Columbia, but sticking with something a little closer to home or a bird guide that's relevant to the area around you is going to be a lot easier to start. There are a lot of different styles to bird books, so you are going to have to figure that out yourself, which kind of guide you like. There's drawings, there's pictures. You might realize you prefer paragraphs describing a bird as opposed to just little notes and arrows. If you aren't sure what you like, you can try a few different ones. Libraries often have multiple guidebooks available, and secondhand bookstores are also great places to look for, to just buy a few for cheap and figure out which ones that you like and use them all at the same time. And of course, we live in the 21st century, so if you don't feel like lugging a book around with you, there are, of course, a bunch of apps and websites to help you out as well. So these apps are going to, of course, run from very simple free versions to paid versions of essentially just the guidebook itself, often with tools to help you identify the bird that you're looking for. With respect to websites, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology All About Birds website is really excellent. There are many others as well. And the Merlin Bird app run by the same organization is quite popular too. So in addition to a guidebook, it's really recommended that you get binoculars. You might be able to go birding a little bit in your backyard or maybe at a feeder without them, but anything else will be really, really difficult. Like anything though, they range dramatically in quality. So if you're just not really sure whether you're going to keep birding, you can get just a simple $20 pair. But if 10 years from now you're really still birding and you love it, you can buy a $200, a $2,000 pair of binoculars. You can consider a bunch of different things depending on how you want to go birding. If you're going to go on big hikes, you may want to take a lightweight pair. If you don't mind birding in the rain, maybe something more water resistant. But a really, really important thing to consider is the magnification and diameter or the field of view. So for birding, it's 8x42 or 10x50 is generally recommended, especially for beginners. And you can go into that and research that on your own if you like, but those are generally the two most preferred fields of view. If you are really into water birds or shore birds, or maybe you have a house with a lake view and you want to get a really good look at the birds out on the water, you can get a spotting scope. They have very, very large ranges of magnification, so 20 to 80 times magnification, but they are quite cumbersome. You'll need a tripod, and they are kind of expensive. They are fairly heavy as well. So backyard birding is a really great way to get started learning the common everyday birds. And the best way to attract birds to your yard is, of course, to feed them. But feeding birds is really good for a lot of reasons. I know not only does it help you learn, but it can also help birds survive the winter. And once you feel comfortable with some of your IDs, you can even participate in citizen science initiatives like Project Feeder Watch. So attracting birds to your yard in general is relatively simple. Planting native plants is always really good. It allows birds to eat the seeds and berries they're familiar with. Keeping thickets and brush piles around provides great hiding spots for birds where they feel safe. And obviously providing water is very important as well. And even though it might go against your gardening instincts, letting flowers go to seed instead of deadheading them and allowing leaves to stay on the ground are also really good bird-friendly practices. Those seeding plants provide seed-eating birds with food, of course, and those leaves actually provide really good insect habitat, which then provides a great buffet of bugs for insect-eating birds. Nest boxes are also a really great idea if you have the room. It's important they're installed in a safe place. There are also a bunch of really great bird-proof plans provided by Bird Studies Canada and the Audubon Society. Also make sure that you can clean out your nest box. Birds don't like living in dirty spaces any more than we do. So if you do decide to get a nest box, just avoid installing or adding any sort of decorations or adornments. That really just provides a foothold for predators, as you can see in that middle photo there. Using treated wood or stain on the inside is not recommended just because those are not particularly healthy, especially for baby birds. And if you're building your own nest box, it's important to be very precise with the size of the entrance hole. Even if it seems way too small for a bird to fit into, I can assure you that they are able to squeeze into really small places. A too large of an entrance hole will just attract starlings and other invasive unwanted birds like house sparrows. And also make sure that your nest box is sort of in an out of the way spot of the yard. Birds aren't going to want people moving all around their babies or their home, essentially. So making your yard bird friendly will automatically provide them with a little bit of food, but it's also nice to watch them at feeders and provide them with extra food as well. There's tons of styles of bird feeders and food types, so you can do a little bit of research as to what might be best for you in your yard. But a few things that do apply to all feeders is to clean them very, very regularly and make sure that they're in a safe place. So ensure that predators can't get to them. And if there are a lot of windows on that area of your house, it's really a good idea to strongly consider applying some bird tape or some of those different solutions to prevent birds from hitting your window. And it's important to be patient as well. Sometimes it can take a little while for birds to realize that you've put a feeder up. So if it's been a few days and you still don't see them, that's fine. Just keep waiting, that they'll find it eventually. Feeding hummingbirds specifically can be very rewarding as they're extremely beautiful and they're very, very entertaining to watch. There are a couple very, very important rules about feeding hummingbirds, though. It's a little bit more work than a regular feeder sometimes. So making your own nectar, it's a very strict ratio, 4 parts water to 1 part sugar. Too much water and they're not getting enough calories or sugar. Too much sugar can be a little bit hard on their kidneys. It is really important to only use pure white table sugar. Even if you don't like using it for yourself, pure white table sugar is just pure glucose. So there's not going to be any trace minerals or anything like that you can find in honey and raw sugars. And do not put any dye in the nectar. Hummingbird feeders are usually red because hummingbirds are attracted to the color red. So there's no need to put it in your hummingbird nectar. It's really important that you clean your hummingbird feeder at least every 4 to 5 days, twice a week if you're able. They must be fully emptied and refilled with new nectar as well, because sugar water can ferment. It creates alcohol, which not great for our livers, really not good for a tiny little hummingbird liver either. A dirty feeder can grow mold, and a moldy feeder can cause infections on the tongue of a hummingbird. And if the infection gets really serious, the hummingbird will be unable to eat, which then means that it will starve to death. And no one would ever intentionally do that, I don't think. So it's important to keep your hummingbird feeder very clean. So to sum up, a bird-friendly yard has a lot of native plant species to provide food and shelter, maybe a nest box or two, some clean, safe bird feeders, and a source of water. And after that, it's really up to you to do whatever you like to make your yard as beautiful and bird-friendly as you like. And that brings us to the end of part 3 and the end of our series on beginner birding as well. Thank you very much for listening. If you do have questions on this presentation or any of the other webinars, please feel free to contact us at info@osstewardship.ca. Thanks for listening.